What is Marathon? Why is there a giant worm lady giving me mission objectives to hurt myself? And why are the robots beating me harder than that one time I forgot the safe word? All these questions and more will be answered today in my complete beginner's guide to Marathon. And all kidding aside, this game can be kind of overwhelming for new players, so I hope today's video helps. Watch the whole thing in order, or if you want, feel free to skip ahead to any of the chapters on your screen right now, complete with timestamps. Starting with Marathon in a nutshell. Marathon is an extraction shooter with elements of PvE and PvP, meaning you'll be fighting the AI enemies, aka the UESC robots, who are deceptively tough, by the way, more on them later, and also enemy players who are out in the field trying to do contracts and find good loot, just like you. It's kinda like Arc Raiders, although you'll soon find that Marathon might be a little bit more aggro and cutthroat than Arc Raiders.
To do my fucking missions.
Saying Arc Raiders, my boy.
You can play solo against other solo players, or you can load in as a team and fight against other teams. In a nutshell, you drop into a match and do 3 things. 1, look for great loot to eventually extract out of the match with. 2, work on completing a contract for one of the various in-game factions. And 3, look for enemy players who you can either avoid if you want to be stealthy and sneaky, or you can engage with and unalive them so you can take all of their loot. If you manage to successfully extract out of the match, you get to keep all of your hard-earned loot, but if you die, you lose whatever you were carrying at the time. Again, if you're like me and coming from Arc Raiders, just a heads up that while there absolutely is a PvE element to Marathon, including endgame PvE activities, more on that in a bit, Marathon seems tipped slightly more towards PvP than Arc Raiders, which I happen to really enjoy. Make no mistake, I definitely have had moments where I've met and been friendly with enemy runners, but they seem to be slightly rarer in Marathon, where the vibe is much more PvP. As far as gear and loadouts work, you can bring in literally whatever you can carry from your vault. You can either bring in a crappy dirt cheap loadout, which won't be as effective, but the upside is if you die, you're not losing much. Or you can bring in a sick, totally kitted, expensive AF loadout, which could potentially be very lethal, but you always run the risk of dying and losing all your gear, which seems terrifying, but honestly, you get over gear fear very fast in Marathon. You also have the option of loading in with a sponsored kit, which is basically a free kit given to you by one of the factions in the game. Sponsored kits are an assortment of cheap, low-level gear. You'll definitely be less deadly when loading in with a sponsored kit, but the upside is it won't cost you anything to equip, and if you die, you didn't lose anything of great value anyway, so who cares? It's kind of like you're playing with house money. How matches with other teams work. Sounds kind of pointless to explain, but trust me, the more I explain it, the more you're really going to get an idea for how the average game of Marathon will go. In Marathon, you load into a map, and almost 100% of the time you will be loaded into a fresh, brand new match. This is a stark contrast to Arc Raiders, where there's a very high chance you'll be loaded into a match in progress, which can be very annoying. There is a very specific way to load into a match in progress in Marathon, but that will only be the case when you're playing as the Rook, and we'll get to him a bit later. So, because all the matches you load into in Marathon are fresh matches, you don't need to worry about an entire team joining a game late and then taking out your team out of nowhere because the match is halfway over and all your healing items are already gone. Again, that can happen in Arc Raiders, but it's not really a thing in Marathon. In Marathon, there are a fixed number of teams that spawn into each map in the game right from the very start, and it depends on the map. For example, the Outpost map, which is relatively small, will only spawn 4 teams of players at the very beginning of the match. Therefore, if you're playing on Outpost and your team completely frags out and wipes 3 other teams, congratulations, your team is now officially the only team left on the map, and you can loot a little bit more peacefully without needing to worry about getting third-partied. You do have to keep an eye out for Rooks, which are basically the free kit class of Marathon. Rooks are the only players who will spawn into a match already in progress, but they will always join in solo against enemy teams. So going back to our previous example, if your team of 3 is playing on Outpost and you kill 3 other enemy teams, your team is officially officially the last team on the entire map. However, you'll still have to keep an eye out for solo Rook players who may join your match in progress. They can pop out of the shadows and surprise you, but again, Rooks are forced to always play solo, and they can only join team-based lobbies. Therefore, if you ever do find a Rook, don't panic too hard because it'll likely be a 3 versus 1 situation. There's an entire argument going on whether players should be mean or nice to Rooks, but hey man, that is entirely up to you. No judgment from me. Dealing with the UESC and other PvE enemies. Across every map, there are USC robots patrolling certain areas. Way back in the Marathon Alpha, these robots were kind of pushovers. In the full release of Marathon though, these clankers will, no joke, totally fuck your shit up if you don't put enough respect on them. Certain UESC bots, noticeably the tougher ones who take a fair amount of effort to kill, can drop good loot that you might be interested in. Enemies like the Scorch Warden. For the most part though, the UESC robots are generally not worth your time to engage with. By shooting at and trying to kill a UESC robot, you are doing 3 things. 1, wasting ammo. 2, wasting healing items if they start hurting you, which they probably will. And 3, making a lot of noise. Meaning that you're very likely going to be attracting the attention of nearby players who will no doubt try to find and kill you while you're distracted fighting the UESC. I can't tell you how many times I've heard enemy players fighting the UESC, so we creep in and murder them. It's really best to just avoid it if you can. However, if the robots are coming after you like it's Five Nights at Freddy's or something, I recommend using the knife. By using the heavy knife swing, you can really F up low-level robots right away, and because you're stabbing them, not shooting them, nearby enemy players won't hear gunfire, allowing you to keep a low profile. The same thing goes for ticks, aka the little alien bug things who will run at and try to murder you. Don't waste ammo on those little freaks. It's too valuable and you'll just be making too much noise. Just take out your knife and send them to whatever little gremlin god they pray to. And while you're at it, use your knife to take out their nest as well, fast and quiet. And do you know what else is fast and quiet? My gaming PC from Starforge, sponsor of today's video. I got mine last year in 2025 and it still runs like a total dream. It was incredibly easy to set up right out of the box, and I'm happy to report that even after all this time, it has given me literally 0 problems. I use it to this day. All right, back to the guide. How healing items work. The 2 healing items you'll arguably use the most are shield charges for your shield and patch kits for your health. When using a shield charge, take note that your shield won't instantly full charge right away after using the item. They take a little bit of time for your shield to fully charge all the way up. Just something to keep in mind if you're a new player. After you use a shield charge, don't think that you're immediately 100% patched up. It's going to take a few seconds. While in a match, by the way, you may also find these depleted shield charges and depleted patch kits. The word depleted is kind of really misleading, by the way, because they aren't fully depleted. You can and should use them. If you open your healing item wheel menu thingy and hit right click if you're on mouse and keyboard, you can cycle between different shield options or different patch kit options. And if you've only taken a little bit of damage, I highly recommend using the depleted shield charge or the depleted patch kit option, which is the weakest healing option. You really want to use those for healing off minor damage and save your good healing items for when you really need good healing. Besides, depleted shield charges and depleted patch kits are items you can't extract with, which the game tells you if you hover over them while in a match. They will automatically be sold when you extract back home, so use them when you can during a match to heal up minor injuries. Moving on, what do antivirus packs and mechanics kits do? In Marathon, you may notice some odd healing items with confusing descriptions, kind of like the mechanics kit or the antivirus pack, which reads, as buffer against hostile data corruption. I mean, great, what the fuck does that mean? Here's a short rundown of both items, which are actually very handy. The mechanics kit helps you fight off negative status effects. For example, these awful, terrible gas plants you find on perimeter or dire marsh that will choke you with spores if you get too close to them. If I activate a mechanics kit before going up and smacking one, you can see that the effects are pretty severely reduced. Granted, I also have a healing drone active, but still. On the other hand, if you bump into one of those little plants and you don't have any healing items on you, like my dumbass was, yeah, you may just choke out all alone in a field. fun. The antivirus pack is to help protect your runner from certain in-game events, usually related to the UESC. At some point while playing, you may notice a giant UESC ship calling down troops to an area, kind of similar to a public event in Destiny. You may also notice that if you try to walk into the red area of the event, you'll immediately get hit with big damage out of nowhere. By applying an antivirus pack though, your HUD will now have a meter on it that slowly goes down over time, and as long as that meter is active, you'll be able to enter that red area of the event without taking damage. And very brief note, if you have a triage on the team and everyone is under the effect of his little healing drone, then if the triage uses either an antivirus pack or a mechanics kit, then everyone on the team with a drone will also receive those effects, which is incredibly awesome. How weapon rarity works. If you're familiar with Arc Raiders, you might know that weapons can be upgraded by right-clicking the gun and spending materials to directly level up the weapon. In Marathon, the rarity of the weapon is 100% determined by whatever weapon mods you have equipped on the gun. For example, here we have an overrun AR, and it's just a regular gray tier weapon. I add one blue tier weapon attachment to it, a grip, and the gun rarity does not change. I now add a second blue tier attachment to it, a grip and a scope, and now the weapon rarity has been upgraded to green. I add a third blue tier attachment, and now the weapon becomes a blue tier weapon. Because of this, it's really important that anytime you kill an enemy runner in the field, you check their weapon. Not necessarily because you want the weapon yourself, but in the event that they have valuable weapon attachments on the gun. There have been plenty of times where I found attachments on a gun that I didn't want, so I simply stripped them off the dead enemy's gun and kept them for myself to put on a better gun later. Gear trading is limited. Again, if you're coming to Marathon from Arc Raiders, this is important to know. In Arc Raiders, if you want to trade items with a friend, you can both load into a match together, each of you drop an item on the floor, you grab the other item, you put it into your safe pocket, and then you surrender and go back to Speranza with the item safely tucked away. In Marathon, you can trade items with a friend that you found in the middle of a match, but if you bring an item into a fresh game with you and you drop it for your teammate to take, they can pick it up and use it for the match, but the item will be marked in-game as borrowed, and you won't be able to extract with it back home. TLDR, you can trade items that you find in a match, but you can't bring items to full-on gear trade. How extractions work. Once there is 20 minutes left on the in-game match timer, extractions will begin to open up on your map. By looking at the map, you can hover over the icons to see the different kinds of extractions. There are regular extraction points and guarded extraction points. A guarded extraction point, when activated, will call in a lot of UESC troops. Definitely not ideal, but sometimes they might be your only option left. Once any extraction point has been activated though, you'll have to wait 50 seconds until it's powered up and ready to go. Be on guard during this time period because it'll shoot a large beam of light up into the sky, alerting nearby players that you're extracting who might now be on the way over to try and kill you. After 50 seconds have gone by, you'll see a small ring of light surrounding the extraction point. When you hop inside that ring, you'll begin a 10-second timer for extraction. If your teammate is being a dum-dum and they're too far away and won't make it in time, you can just reset the 10-second timer by leaving and re-entering the circle. And remember, you can still exfil out of a match if you're downed. As long as you are alive in the circle, you can leave. Keep in mind that extraction points are not multi-use like in Arc Raiders. If you miss an extraction point in Marathon, you'll now have to look for a new one on your map to head to. At the very end of a match, when the in-game timer hits 0, a brand new 1-minute timer will appear, and that will spawn the final, very last extraction point on the map. That extraction will activate automatically and will leave when the new in-game timer reaches 0. So if you're still in the match at that point, head there right away and don't miss out. What are contracts and which should I prioritize? In Marathon, there are several factions that you can work with at any time. They will offer you contracts, usually each with a very straightforward objective. You can only have one active contract at a time, but when you select your contract, just load into a match, do what the contract tells you to do, and when the game is over, you go turn in your completed contract. Doing that will give you faction rep and sometimes other gear as well. The more your faction rep goes up, the more you'll have access to unlocking and buying certain upgrades. You can kind of think of this as a bootleg skill tree. See, for example, right here, I want to get the level 4 version of the expansion upgrade, which gives me more room in my vault. Unfortunately, I'm only rank 13 with the Cyber Acme faction at the moment, and the level 4 version of expansion requires me to be rank 8 18 with Cyber Acme, meaning basically I gotta go out and grind a few more Cyber Acme contracts. There are regular contracts and priority contracts. Priority contracts should be prioritized because they give significantly more faction rep and better rewards. For new players, I think grinding out faction contracts should be the first thing you focus on. I know a lot of players will try to focus on PvP and trying to just slay out and get the best weapons they can off dead enemies, and look, ain't nothing wrong with that, but focusing on contracts and leveling up your factions is very important because the upgrades are extremely beneficial to you as a player. And here's a few examples. The expansion upgrade improves your vault space so you can hoard more loot. The heatsink, quick vent, and active cool upgrades improve the performance of your heat meter. If you don't know what that is, a heat meter is kind of like a reverse stamina meter. Basically, when you run around or jump or slide or whatever in game, you'll notice your heat meter slowly building up. But when you stop moving, your meter will slowly cool off, and it can cool off even faster if you're in a cold environment, aka if you're standing out in the rain or something. Either way though, those Cyber Acme faction upgrades to your heat meter will help a lot, so focus on them early on. Also keep an eye out for the scavenger upgrade, which reveals loot faster. TLDR though, prioritize completing contracts and buying runner upgrades whenever you can. And on that note, what loot should you keep and sell? This was a huge question that I got a lot while streaming Arc Raiders, and it makes sense. There's a bunch of loot in Marathon, and as a new player it can probably feel very overwhelming. Do I keep this? Do I sell that? Yada yada yada. The short answer is all loot is good, but here's what I recommend targeting right away. 1. Any healing items at all, aka if the item has this icon at the very top. Healing items in Marathon are super important, and while you can buy them directly from the armory, they're kind of expensive and not really what I want to be spending my in-game currency on. Specifically, look for shield charges and patch kits of any kind because you'll be using them both a lot. 2. Any item whose icon looks like this. These are enhanced salvage, and as the game tells you, these items are what you'll eventually use to buy faction upgrades, like the ones we just talked about. If I go to the faction upgrade page, you'll see that in order to purchase the active cool upgrade, I need to spend both credits and unstable gel. Thankfully, I have plenty in my vault, but any item in the game you find with that icon that says enhanced salvage, you'll eventually need those items for high-level faction upgrades. Starting out though, here's what salvage items you should keep an eye out for right away. Unstable diodes, unstable gunmetal, unstable biomass, unstable lead, and unstable gel. Basically, if it tells you it's unstable, you want to immediately grab it and take it with you. Unlike real life, of course, where if somebody tells you they're unstable, you should probably stay away, even if you're a little bit tempted. All those items are needed for buying really valuable upgrades for the Cyber Acme faction, so again, prioritize hoarding unstable items that you find right away. Finally, any and all weapon mods. Weapon mods can be directly removed from any weapon you find in the field. Therefore, if you find a weapon that maybe you don't like using, but it does have an interesting weapon attachment you want to try out, just rip it off the weapon and take it home with you. Moving on, what is the best runner shell in Marathon? There are 7 shells in Marathon that you can choose to play as, and each does something different. I'll give a very brief TLDR on each and then give my hard recommendations on what to go for. The Destroyer shell is kind of the aggro, kick down the door runner shell who enjoys sprinting headlong into combat and being aggressive. The Vandal shell is the movement demon shell. Her abilities are mostly movement focused, and she has a double jump, which can allow you to reach high ground for some sneaky angles. The Recon shell is what else? The Recon option. It can help highlight nearby enemies and is good at tracking down enemy players. The Assassin shell is what you play if you're a brooding edgelord. You can go invisible and pull off some very sneaky plays. The Triage shell is the combat medic. You can heal teammates with a heal drone, and your prime ability, aka your ultimate, can instantly revive teammates from very far away. The Thief shell is a hybrid between a movement specialist and a loot goblin. You have a drone that can help you pickpocket loot off enemies, although most people these days are using it for extremely broken shenanigans like loading it up with claymores and sending it directly at the enemy for an instant team wipe. I'm gonna go ahead and bet my left nut that gets patched right away, but they also do have a grappling hook for some fun movement plays. The final shell is the Rook, but he's very special and deserves his own section. More on him in a minute. If you're a solo player, the current meta seems to be leaning very hard towards the Assassin shell. You can use the Assassin's abilities to be very sneaky and get out of danger in the blink of an eye, which is really handy in solo lobbies. If you're more into teams though, all the shells are pretty good, but I hard recommend you have at least one triage on the team. The healing drones are literally always helpful and extremely easy to abuse, while your prime ability is god tier good. Being able to instantly revive a teammate from several meters away is insane and can turn the tide of a fight damn fast. Very easy to play and hard meta, perfect for new players looking to not be a burden to their teammates. And if you really want to challenge and want to play a shell with a high skill ceiling, that would probably be either the Vandal or the Thief. Again, they each have solid movement abilities, and all the top shelf PvP demons love styling on enemy teams with these runners. Very quickly, what is the Rook and should you play it? The Rook is the 7th and final shell currently in Marathon and is basically a walking free kit. You can't bring any gear in with you as a Rook. Instead, you'll be given gear, but only a random assortment of weak, low-level items. Essentially, if you're really broke and don't want to risk losing gear, you can always play as a Rook. Remember though, if you decide to play as a Rook, not only will you be going into games solo, but you'll always be put into team lobbies against duos and trios, meaning that as a Rook, you'll almost always be outnumbered, fighting entire teams as a solo player. In addition to that, every game that you join will be a match already in progress, so playing a Rook isn't so much about running headlong into combat and getting first dibs at all the best loot. Rather, the Rook is more of a quiet battlefield scavenger, carefully creeping around in the shadows. Because of this, most of the Rook's kit is about being sneaky. They can even disguise themselves as UESC troops in order to blend in and not get attacked by them. It sounds kind of lonesome, but remember the upside is that if you play as a Rook, your kit is 100% free, so you'll never lose any money by playing a Rook. Also, I gotta say, playing as a Rook was a lot more fun than I thought it would be. You're always on high alert, and knowing you're a solo player in team lobbies makes for some heart-pounding moments. And finally, is there an endgame in Marathon? The short answer to that is yes, for both PvE and PvP. On the PvP side of things, Marathon will be getting a ranked mode, which is scheduled to drop in, quote, the second half of March. Put your survival skills to the test and exfil with valuable loot to climb the ranked ladder and earn exclusive rewards each season. Yeah, not a lot of info, and if you can believe it, Bungie is being equally tight-lipped about the PvE endgame, which as of right now seems to be the Cryo Archive activity, also slated to drop later in March. First, players will be tasked with finding a way to get onto the UESC Marathon ship hanging out above the planet. Once aboard the ship, the 4th Zone Cryo Archive will then become available. Per Bungie, prepare your mind and shell to take on this endgame zone on the Marathon ship, where you'll solve security puzzles, unseal frozen vaults, and come face to face with an entity even the UESC fears. Which to me sounds a lot like a raid or a dungeon in Destiny, where you have to solve puzzles with your team and stay alive fighting off PvE enemies. Although in Marathon, you'll also probably be fighting off other players too, due to it being an extraction shooter. Not a lot of info yet, but again, if you're a new player, definitely important to keep both of those activities in the back of your mind as we get deeper into March. Please give today's video a like if you're a new player and found it helpful, and swing by the stream channel sometime to say hey. Thank you very much for watching. Peace!